Welcome to Tsuriou's another episode of Tsuriou's Master Class. Today our topic will be on mastering the technique, how to master the technique to entice the squid. So this topic is very important because once you learn it, it will help you on increase your catch rate as well as how to tame the squid as well. So we'll start off with a squid jig. So a squid jig is inanimated. So with it, without any movement or anything, it will not entice squid. So we have to add motion into it to make it more lifelike to entice the squid. So to how to add different motions for different look and feel to represent the bait, the prey that they feed on is important. So different technique that I will be teaching will help you to how to make this jig animated to entice the squid. So squid are ambush predator. They hunt not by sound, they hunt with their visual. So it's important for us to add animation to the jig to try to entice their attention for them to attack. So their main prey in the wild is usually shrimp or fish. So shrimp, prawn, and fish. So it's important for us to try to, a jig shape is actually based on a prawn or a shrimp as well as a baitfish. So we try to mimic what the natural prey that they feed on so that they'll be enticed to actually attack the jig. So what is egging? Eggy is actually the meaning of squid jig in Japanese. So for egging, it's like jigging. It's the same thing, but it's the technique itself. It's called egging. So it's pretty much it's the egging the jig to entice the squid. So eggy stands for squid jig in Japanese, and egging is the technique itself. So I'll teach you first will be the most basic egging technique that you see what people use, and that's what usually you see in videos and everything. That's the whipping technique. So the whipping technique, the purpose is to make to mimic the shrimp and the prawn. So thinking this as a shrimp. Shrimp normally they stay around the bottom of the sea bait, just hanging around. So if you do go prawning before, you use the light to shine on it. So what would the shrimp do? They get spooked and they'll dart backwards. They'll go backwards, then they'll come back down again. So this is what shrimp will behave in natural wild behavior. So you will see the shrimp will dart backwards, then they'll come back down again. So this is what we try to mimic with the whipping technique. So how do you do the whipping technique? The whipping technique is when you cast it out, give it time to let your squid jig sink to the bottom of the seafloor. So it's important to get to the seafloor before you do the whipping because the squid hang around at the sea bait. That's where the strike zone is. We call it the strike zone because if the squid don't see your jig, they can't attack it. So if you go down to the strike zone before you do the whip, then you'll give the squid opportunity to see a jig coming down, and then before an action to catch the attention. So cast your jig out, then followed by let it sink, then you do the whipping technique. So you do the whipping technique, so let it whip. The purpose of the whip is like the prawn. It jumps, hop, and let it come back down. It hops, and let it come back down. So, but when you do the whip, don't do it just for the sake of looking good, because a lot of people you see, they cast it out, do massive whip, non-stop. The purpose is that you do the whip, let it hop, and you need to give it time to go back down. When it's coming down, that's when the squid attack it, because it's not too aggressive. When it's aggressive, the squid will not attack. So when it's coming down, that's where the squid will come and attack it. So also that when you whip, the jig will keep coming up closer and closer to the bait. So once you whip it, the first 2 times, they will have a loose because the jig is coming closer to you. So you have more slack line, you'll start winding up. So winding up, the jig was actually down here. When you whip, you come back up here, and you start winding, the jig is staying here. But if you wind too much, the jig will stay here. So you need to give it more line to actually be able to sink down before you do the second whip. So do not wind in too much of your slack line to the point where it's too tight, where the jig stay in the mid water. So you need to give it more line so that it can still go down to the bottom of the sea bait. So if you have not enough, you wind too much and you tighten the line, and if it's in the middle, at times you can still get a hit because when the squid follow, they'll still attack it. But At times, it's best to give it more time to go down as well. But for smaller squid, you might want your line to be tighter, so to stay in the midline, so that when they touch it, you can still strike. That's the more advanced technique I'll teach in the next session. So for the most of the time, you will try to get the jig not too loose of the tension to let it get down to the bottom as well. So even if you see, also there's one thing to be careful of, because as you're constantly whipping, it's coming closer and closer to you, and the line you're winding is less and less. Actually, it's very shallow, become very shallow. It's actually on top of the, pretty close to the top of the water already. If you whip too hard and you start flying towards you and fly out of the water, it might hit you. So this is one thing that you have to be careful of, because like a lot of people are just whipping without realizing that the jig is actually getting really close already and start flying out of the water and might hit you. So this is the most basic technique, so whipping. So that's to mimic the shrimp. So this technique is good for all occasions. So I'll teach you other technique that we incorporate into our own technique that others may not have teach, but this is what we have incorporated into our own technique to increase our chances. So the next technique is what I'm teaching will be another basic technique. It's the darting technique. So you see people in the shore, they'll do like whack, 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 whack like that. So like, so when you do that, what it does, have you imagined when there's a school of fish, and at times like you see, they start jumping out of the water or start darting away. So this is a darting method. So when the squid or a big predator fish start chasing other smaller bait fish, they'll start darting or they jump out of water. So this technique that I'll be teaching will make a jig go left, right, left, right, left, right. Then let it sink, left, right, left, right, left, right, let it sink, left, right, left, right, let it sink. So how do you do that? So when your tip is up, your handle have to be down. So when your handle is up, your tip is down. So you go up, down, up, down. So it's opposite. So when your reel, the handle is up, your tip will be down, or the rod tip will be down. So when it's down, you'll be up. So you go, so when you do it fast, you'll be like that. So you dart the jig. So you go fast. So you dart the jig. So actually, by right, your tip is up, your reel is down, your handle is down, up, down, up, down. So that's to do the darting method. The darting method is to mimic the bait fish. So also same thing, once you do the dart, give it time to sink down. So when it sinks down, that's when the bait looks not the most aggressive. That's when the squid will come and check it out and attack it. So if you're darting real fast, they will not come and they will come and check it out, but they will not have time to grab it. So they will usually might back out, or when that's why you need to stop and let it sink. That's when they attack it. So this is one of the main method. So this two method is great for all application, but especially when they are more aggressive. So because this technique are more aggressive, so when they are more during non-feeding time and when they're not too aggressive, these are the other three methods. These are the other method I'll be teaching you next. So these are the method that we created our own. So the trolling method. So for the trolling method, we have few of these methods that we incorporate into our fishing, especially during the afternoon or when squid are more cautious and they're more timid. So you want to entice them to their curiosity, so they'll come and check out the jig. Now that's why they're not in the feeding mode, but you want to entice their curiosity, or to make them feel that this is an easy prey, because they're born to breed and feed to grow fast, because they only have 1 year of life. So that's why you need to entice them out of their curiosity during the quiet time when they're not feeding, to come and check out the jig. So that is during the time you see a lot often that in the afternoon if you fish, you tend to get the tentacle hook, because they're actually not in the feeding mood where they just grab and just chuck into the mouth. So that is why catching a squid in a tentacle is nothing wrong, because it's not that you are just luck or fluke. It's actually, if you can catch a smaller squid consistently with tentacle, that's actually a very skillful thing to do, because you need to actually entice their curiosity to actually come and use the tentacle to come check out your jig, and they got hooked in the process. So that's why some people, they catch more during the afternoon compared to others, is because why? When it's quiet, because they can entice them out of the curiosity, or alternately they can entice them because they feels that, oh, this is an easy prey, I just swimming by, might as well just grab it and feed, you know. So this is the two thing that you see a lot of times where they get hooked in tentacle because they're not really aggressive to come and attack it. For big squid, it's easy to catch because once they come, they're usually very aggressive, and you can feel it on your rod tip very easily because there's pressure on it. You just grab and pull. But for smaller squid, they tend to just grab and touch and all these things. That's why a lot of people miss the opportunity to hook them. It's because they do not know that squid actually is already touching and actually on their squid jig. So this is the method I'll be teaching you on how to actually entice them out of their curiosity to get hooked during the quiet time. So the first method is the slow double tap. We call it the slow double tap. So this method is actually really good for kayak as well as boat as well. Kayak and boat, we usually don't use the aggressive whipping technique and all these things because you actually do not need to cast that far out. Because for the whipping technique, actually you cast out, you do a massive whip. Actually, the jumping is actually not high because you transfer the energy all the way to the line. So you don't need that much. Actually, the hop is actually not that much from the jig because of the energy transferred there. So ultimately, if you can't do the whipping technique, you don't have to do the whipping technique. Actually, we do at times, we just do the hop like that with double hand or single hand. Just pull it up, that's it. You don't have to do like those fancy whipping and stuff. A lot of people just recently, they just spend their $1,000 rod, but just doing the whip just to look cool, but they never catch and stuff. So the key is that you don't have to do the whip just to make the hop. You can just pretty much lift your rod, that's it. Yeah, actually that will do the hopping technique as well. So for this technique, the slow double tap technique is actually more subtle because for boat and kayak, you actually fish at where the squid is already. So you don't actually have to cast and search location and cast far out. So you're actually on the spot where the squid is. So it's much easier, and if you're doing this aggressive technique, it actually will spook them. So it's better off to use this double tap technique. The double tap technique is actually to mimic how, like what prey they feed on, which is like king George whiting, grass whiting, sand whiting, where they are bottom feeders. So the fish will actually swim like you see fish swim like that, then they'll go straight like that, straight like that, move around. They're just foraging for food. So you don't have to be aggressive. So this method is just to show like for fish that is foraging in the bottom of the seafloor, like looking for clams or crabs and this sort of stuff. So this technique is very good for boat and kayak. So this is the method that we usually use for boat and kayak, and also very good for land-based as well, especially when it's a quiet time. So this method is pretty much easy. You just tap your rod, tap your rod, wind a bit, tap, wind a bit, tap. You can face your rod down or your rod up. So either way, when the rod is up, you can feel more tension on it. And when your rod down, you just have to tighten up a bit of your line to make it more tension. So you just go tap. Then when the squid hit, you will feel it. Yeah. So this technique is much more effective for boat is because that you're already on the spot itself. So if you use more whipping technique and aggressive technique, you need to let it sink down before they actually hit. So when the aggressive technique, they might spook them because it's going so close to them because you're actually at the spot where they are already. For land-based, it's different. You cast it out and you try to bring the squid jig in. The squid might be here, but you're already doing a hop here, and when you come here, that's where the squid is. So actually do not spook them. Yeah, so that's much better technique. So for this double tap technique, it's better for use for boat and kayak as well as land-based when it's quiet. Let's go double tap. So the other method is also part of the trolling method is to drag and wind. So you drag your line and wind it. So this is to mimic the fish. In quiet, the current is not strong. They're just swimming along really slowly. The squid sees an easy prey. Grab it and eat it. Yeah. So this method is what we usually use as well, especially for land-based. So when it's quiet, so we just cast it out, let it sink. Then after when we wind it, then we just drag the line. So when you drag like that, the jig will drag along. Then we'll let it sink. So we pull our rod back, let it sink. Then we wind the line, the loose line of it. Then we drag again, so the jig will pull again. So the main purpose is to just throw the jig because at the back of on the ocean, on the sea. So we just drag, the jig will come. We wind it in, drag again, the jig come again, wind it in, drag again, let it go, sink. So this method is very subtle. So for timid small squid, you see a lot of times they do come and follow, but they back off, they do follow, they back off. So this method is very subtle, so you do not spook the small squid. So at times, when you let it sink down after your first drag, let it slow down. Don't rush to actually pull it back, because the smaller squid, they will come and check it out, and they actually will take time before they're actually willing to attack. So they'll actually check it out first. So if you give it enough time, they will attack it before you do your next drag. So when you do the next drag, actually you will hook the squid itself actually. So give it time. So this method is very subtle, so you do not spook the squid, especially when it's quiet time, and will bring out their curiosity to check it out. So that's why you see why a lot of small squid or the medium-sized squid, they come follow your jig, but they just back off, follow your jig, you back off. Because why? You do not give it time, and your action is too aggressive, that is spook it away. So give it time so that you have a chance to hook it as well. So the last one for the technique is the slow hop. So this technique is actually to, like a fish, they swim, they move up the different water column. So that's why when you're fishing mackerel or yaka or garfish, it's important when you're doing float fishing that the key is to know the depth of the water, where the fish is. Because from visual, you see the fish is there, but for the people with the skill, they actually can judge the distortion of the water. So actually what you see in the fish, you might think is 1 meter, but it's actually deeper than 1 meter. So there's a distortion. So if you're really good at judging the depth, that's where how people improve in their catch rate. But for this one, it's like the fish, because you need to judge which they swim up and down the different water column. So this technique is to mimic fish swimming from different water column. So that's why we call it the slow hop. So we swim like the squid, the fish will just move up the other column and just swim a bit, move up the other column and swim a bit. So this is to mimic the fish going from one column of the water to the other, like from different depth of the water. So this technique is will be doing that. So for us, this technique is pretty much very subtle. You just very relaxed, whine, just to do a few taps like that, let it go up a bit. It's just similar to whipping, but you do not whip. You just a light lift, like 1 lift or 2 lift. That's it. You just let the jig up and slowly go down. 1, 2, go down. 1, 2, go down. So that's when it's more subtle, the squid will attack. So that is why you do not use aggressive technique during quiet times. When it's feeding time, sunrise and sunset, bang, 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 aggressive technique, any jig color, they will still attack. But when it's subtle, when it's a quiet time, afternoon, or when they're not in the feeding mood, that's where jig color, technique, that you need to be more subtle, and the jig size and the sink rate all play a big part in how you can increase your catch rate. That is why important to know that different techniques will help you at different situations. Just like different colors with squid jig and different sizes will help you at different water condition and weather condition as well. So it's no one size fits all. It's actually to incorporate different technique and different day. Squid actually have different behavior as well, depending on the day, as well as the time, as well as the water condition. And also like each school of squid, they also have some that is more introvert and some is more extrovert as well. So the extrovert one will be the one that come and check out your squid jig, and they're more aggressive, they'll attack it right away. Those that's more timid, that's where you have to put in the more effort and technique to actually entice them. So that's pretty much what we'll cover today. And for next topic, we'll be teaching you more on the advanced technique that you can incorporate where the currents are strong, how you're going to actually fish when currents are strong, and also like more advanced drifting technique and other technique as well. So these are the basic techniques that we use for squid fishing. So you can incorporate this, and also you can use more advanced technique. So if you haven't joined our community page, do join our community page, and this month's giveaway will be one of these. This is a mask. So this is our mask. We have weekly giveaway of squid jig. You just have to be active in our page, and we have a lucky draw weekly to choose a winner for giveaway. You just have to post your catch, share recipe or anything, then you'll be in it to win it. So at the end of the month, we'll draw everyone that has entered the weekly draw for a monthly prize. So this month's prize will be a face mask, face shield. So if you have any question, do let me know now. So we have, I'll give you a couple of minutes so to see answer any question that you have. Some rods actually create a very distinctive whipping sound. So, but don't get put off by those like thinking they're like professional or anything. You don't have to really do the whipping technique, like make it really whippy sound just to be cool or anything, but actually just a high lift or double lift, that'll be fine. So usually you just double lift or lift, hop, hop, that's it. You don't have to do, the main thing is just to transfer the energy to all the way to the line to get the jig to hop, because it's so far you cast out that you need the energy to be transferred to that all the way to the distance to actually get it to hop. So the angle that you think it might be like that, but actually it's not. So actually it's actually much shallower. So you have to give it time to sink down to the bottom of the sea. So the darting method is usually you do after you cast out. The first you do whipping for the first two to hop, and after that you do the darting technique. So that's the one up down. So it's like let it sink, then let it sink as well. So these two techniques is the one that most people will use in egging. So, but the other three method that we mentioned is what we use so that we increase our catch rate during when it's quiet. So these are the most basic egging technique that you'll see in the video, the first two. So the others that actually is what we actually incorporate ourselves. So you can see what you can do. It's no right or wrong technique. You can actually incorporate what you see is right on the day, or what you feel is the best that the squid are into on the day as well. So sometimes it's not good to put your rod tip in the water, but at times I do stick my rod tip in the water to actually just do like tip, like tap, like tap, like tap. So that method is not a good method, but that's at times I do. For boat, usually just a double tap method will be sufficient because you don't really need to be aggressive. That's actually very effective for boat fishing and kayak fishing. And also remember the angle. So when the angle from here to the line, you need to give it enough line to let it to sink to the bottom because of the angle. So a lot of times people do not let go enough line. So sometimes after you cast, don't close your bill right away. Sometimes at times I let it sink a bit before actually I close my bill, because you actually need more line, especially if you're using slow sinking jigs. It takes longer to sink, so actually you need more line. So if you actually close your bill early and the line is not long enough, it actually the slow sinking will just be hanging around up here. So you actually need it to give more line and more time as well for it to get to the bottom. So using a slow sinking jig, it actually require another technique as well. So you need to be more patient, and also there's at times you open up your bill, pull more line out, close it, and let it give it more line. Or else you'll just be floating like that on top. It doesn't go down to the bottom. Because slow sinking jig is much lighter, so the line you need to actually let it sink actually it's much more than normal line. So that is one point that you have to remember. And so a lot of people say, oh, how come slow sinking doesn't sink and all these things? Because you did not give it enough line, and because of the tension of the line, you actually hold it up and it's just floating there. So this is one thing that you need to think about as well if you're using slow sinking line. For which color jigs when? So that one we actually had a master class previously, so you can have a look at the video. So the main thing for us is that we have a color science concept. So I'll just show you the thing. So Pino, this is our color science chart. So how to select jigs? As mentioned, squid are predator, so they hunt with their eyes, and their eyesight are actually, they only see black and white, they're colorblind. So the key thing is how to create a silhouette, how to turn a jig, a colored jig, into black and white. So our key is how to turn a colored jig into black and white. And red color is actually create the best silhouette, because why? It actually loses its shade of color when it goes about 5 meters. So from a red colored jig, once you go down to 5 meters, it becomes a pure black jig. So that's why red color jig is very effective for all condition, even when the water is really murky and everything, because it creates the most dark silhouette, black silhouette. So once you go 5 meters, you become a black jig. So that's why red, followed by orange, yellow, green and stuff. But different color will work differently as well and more effectively. Let's say for sunrise and sunset. Red, because it's created of pure black, it might not look as natural. Because orange, with a sunrise and sunset, orange light shine orange, you'll lighten the orange shade. So when it sinks, you'll create a different shade of orange and before it becomes black. So it becomes more natural, like a natural baitfish, where they have a silver white, and all these things as they swim around. So for orange color, you actually, when it dives, you actually create a more natural silhouette that will entice the squid much better. So that's why this concept you can check out on one of our masterclass to learn different colored jig for different purposes and for different conditions as well. So a lot of time colors are just for a lot of companies. They create colors to attract customer, fancy colors and stuff, which is attractive. But if you understand the color science that we propose and the Tsuriou color science, if you can go to our website, we actually have the chart up there in the video form, so you can see how the different jig sync and different color. You'll create different silhouette. So the key is to create a silhouette that actually will stand out. So that's why, because colorblind, you can't think like human. If you think like human, how humans see, you will not understand how squid behaves. So if you understand the squid vision compared to human vision, we are totally different. We can see color, they can't see color. They see black and white. So for this jig, it's green and brown. We have a head and body separation. You might think that, okay, this is a green jig, but to a squid, they'll see this as a black and white. So it's actually, this background will be white and this jig will be black. But how do we get this jig to create different shades of black or gray? Is how, depending on different condition of the weather as well as the water condition. Why our sea is blue or green in color is because that blue and green color will have the energy to penetrate deep down the sea before it loses its shade. That's why our water is blue and green compared to other colors. That's why we don't see other colors in the water unless you use a light to shine on, to put in the white light. That's why then before you can see, when you go diving, you see actually everything is gray until you get the light to shine on, diving light, before you start seeing colors. That's why as you go too deep, as you go deeper, the more color will be lost. That's why a lot of corals and stuff, you lose its color until you actually shine lights on it. So that's why you have to understand how different color works. Then you can go to a shop. Then you can, when you buy jig, you understand which jig will work more effectively. That's why when it's not dark at night, do not be afraid to use a red foil jig with a black cloth. That is very effective. Why? Because you will work, because the black jig we can't see in person at night. A black jig at night we can't see well. But as it turns black and white, a jig will stand out like a sore eye. Squid can just see it right away in the water. It's a black jig and it's pure. And the background they'll see is all white, and this black jig will be just sticking out like a sore eye. So it's very effective. Any more questions? Because a lot of people say, oh, there's so many colors, you don't know what to choose and stuff. These are just to attract customer. But if you do understand the color science behind it and how we work with our jigs and design. So we design our jig with patterns and stuff, and color and head and body separation. The head is because that squid usually attack by grabbing a head to immobilize the squid, their prey. That's why we had the head and body separation. So they always attack the head. So when they attack the head, the hand will get more part will be grabbed on the head, and there's more section of their tentacle. So if they grab like that, there's more part of the tentacle will be hook on, so it's much better hook rate as they pull into their mouth to eat it. So they'll usually use their two long tentacle and grab the jig and pull it in. So we had a head and body separation for that purposes as well. Yeah. Does a UV jig work? Yes, squid have three kind of vision that I teach previously. So they can see black and white. They have a heightened senses in their eyes that they can see UV light. So they can actually detect UV. So we had a master class, but that master class is deleted because it was not as high quality because it was hard for people to hear. And actually I had a UV camera, so this one will actually show that how squid will see UV as well. So if you see UV, a jig will become, absorb the UV and it become a black jig or a purple jig to a purple shade or dark gray shade to the squid. So it's the same thing, we call it a UV silhouette. So when the UV material actually absorb the UV rays, you'll create the jig to become a UV silhouette. You'll create a UV silhouette. So we'll redo the masterclass again in one of the days when it's much hotter, when the sun is up, because the camera needs the UV rays to actually show how our glow. Because as what we were saying, like glow jigs. Why do white jig works in the morning, in the daytime? You see the glow jig, glow in the dark jig not only work at night, but they also work in the day. At night, it works in attracting the squid third eyesight, which is to see lights, bright lights. So because in deep sea, you see that in the deep sea, the colossal squid, is pitch black in the dark, but they can see black and white. And why do deep sea, they have like fish and other creatures will actually glow and stuff? So squid can actually see the glow of the lights. So they will actually go towards the light and attack the prey. So for glow, it works at night. As well as glow, it works in the day. It works in the day because of UV. Because glow, what do glow in the dark work? How do glow in the dark works? Glow in the dark, actually, you need to absorb the energy of the light before it will glow. So that's what happened. It absorbs the energy and it will glow. But in the morning, if it's sunlight, it absorbs the UV rays. So it charges up with the UV rays. So you can't see the glow because it's in a bright daylight. But once it's charged with the UV, it's like a vessel. It holds the UV rays in the body of the jig. So the jig become UV charged, so it absorbs the UV. So with the squid, they can actually see the jig become a black jig. That's why a UV jig will work. So for what sort of bottom do you find squid? Rocky, weedy, or sandy? So for us, we usually to look for the habitat is usually broken ground, which is rock area. So if you drive a kayak or boat across where there's like rocks and all these things in the area, they usually have good stays in the rocky area, weedy area, but not really the sandy area, because sandy area they don't have place to hide because they are ambush predator. That's why they need to place to hide, to ready to attack. So usually rocky, weedy area, that's where they usually hang around. If you want to find new location, just open up your Google map, open the 3D view, and if you look on the shore, you see any black patches, those are like broken ground and weed ground as well. So that will usually hold the squid. So those other areas will usually hold squid. So is night better? What time of day is best? Depending on countries, but because of the species of the squid, for our Australian southern calamari and arrow squid and stuff, we can fish the whole day and night, that's fine. But the only difference is that the prime time for feeding for them is at sunrise and sunset. That's where they're most aggressive. So that's if you are new to squid fishing and you do not incorporate too many of the more fancy techniques to how to entice them. So you can fish during these hours, like sunrise and sunset. That's where the prime time when they're in the feeding mode. When it's feeding mode, jig color doesn't play as important of a part. And jig, expensive or cheap jig doesn't make a difference during that time. But people always say like, oh, Kmart jig will work and everything. Yes, it will work. But if you want to really see the difference, expensive jig, not all expensive jig work equally. That's why that's one thing as well. There's a lot of people have created, a lot of companies to create a range. So, but only selected colors works well. That's why you have to go understand the color science that we have on our website. So once you understand the color science, then you can go and pick any brand on the colors that you think will work well based on the color science. Because not all work equal. That's why a lot of people spend a lot of money on trying different jigs before they find their own favorite one. So for us, we design our jigs based on what we know will work. So all our jig will work effectively and even more effectively at certain times as well. So fish during the sunrise and sunset. If you are not that experienced, that's the best time to catch your squid. But if you are start to become more experienced, you know how to incorporate like more advanced technique or the more subtle techniques, then you can fish during the afternoon or even night. So that's the time where they need more ways to actually entice them. So that's why it's much harder to catch during that time. So, but if you see in the pier, some people is catching non-stop while others next to them using the same jig and the same equipment, but they don't catch. It's because of the technique as well. Because during the afternoon and night, it's very hard. So you actually have to be more, actually you do have to fish, not just cast and prey. You actually have to incorporate technique and actually do have to know how long it takes for your jig to sink down to the bottom, and roughly have to judge how deep it is on the time you're fishing, like the depth and everything. If the water isn't crystal clear, what jig color is the best to use? So if the water is very murky, dirty or everything, use the most basic one, which is red foil and black cloth. Because why? Because that will create the best silhouette to stand out. Because red, as I mentioned earlier, I showed the chart, because it loses color in relatively shallow waters. So once it loses its shade, it becomes a pure black jig. With another black cloth over it, you create a very extremely black, so that it will stand out in a black and white vision. Imagine take a photo and turn it into black and white. So even the water is dirty, it doesn't matter, because the water becomes just like a gray background, and the jig will become a pure black. So you can use that, or alternately use a glow jig, because a glow jig will actually, the light will actually penetrate the water to create a halo, like a white halo in the water. To them, it will be just a white halo round circle around the jig of light. So they'll come towards it to check it out. So this is the two vision you can target when the water is very, very dirty. So either a red foil jig with a black cloth, or a white jig with a glow body, or any other glow color as well. So that's the two to target during the most safest to use during dirty water. You can use other color as well. If it's sunrise or sunset, the water is dirty, you can use orange jig or yellow jig, or the pink jig, because these are the colors that where the clouds have the light as well. So you actually enhance the color of the jig. When it dives down, when you create a silhouette, you will still create a more natural silhouette compared to a pure black one. So to be play safe, dirty water, use pure black. Pretty much match the hatch. When it's dirty, when it's dark, use those type of jigs. Red foil, black cloth. Anything with red foil will always work. Can you catch squid at low tide? Yes, I do fish low tide and high tide. It doesn't matter. But actually, for me, I find that during full moon, that's a reason behind it as well, the science behind it, why full moon is harder to catch squid in shallows. They tend to go deeper. So that's another master class for it. High tide or low tide, it doesn't matter. Squid will still be around. But usually, we prefer to low tide. If the wave is still moving, it's fine. We find that when the water is really stagnant, we tend to struggle to catch as much squid, because they like a bit of movement to move them around. So if it's stagnant, we usually find that it's much harder for us to be fishing on the day. So usually we see the water, we kind of know that it's going to be a hard day to tempt them. So low tide or high tide doesn't matter, but if it's too flat, usually it's quite hard to fish them. Do arrow squid live in deeper waters? Yes, arrow squid in Victoria itself usually go deeper in the water, deeper out in the sea. So for us in the shallow area, we don't usually catch them. Usually only bycatch. At times they might come one or two to close to the shore that we catch them. But one of the year after the COVID, we had really weird. So the southern calamari was struggling to stay in the shallows. The people has been catching arrow squid in the shallows quite often, but after that year, everything went back to normal, and not many arrow has been reported anymore. But these 2 years is really weird that cuttlefish has been increasing in the Victoria waters, in the shallows that we used to catch maybe one or two on land base a year, if we're lucky. But now pretty much we catch quite often in the shallows. Yeah, so the climate change actually changed the behavior as well. Like, it seems to be cuttlefish is actually spawning much more, or they come closer to the shore more often. So it's just really weird. So we just have been observing over the years as well. Any more questions? Colors of jig is important. So also learn about the sink rate. Sink rate is very crucial as well. So you can look back on the tree. You can join our community page, which is free. There we have like the replays of the previous three. So we talk about the sink rate of the jig, the size of the jig, as well as the color, how to choose different colors. So it's important of that. During quiet time, that's where you see the right color jig, the right sink rate, the right technique come into play. Those people will actually outfish people that that's not catching during the quiet time, like afternoon or night. So these are very important. So colors, a lot of people say, oh, colors doesn't play a big part, but colors do play a big part. But for the safe colors, these two are the safest. You can use, if you're new, just use these two colors. You'll be used for day and night as well. So for us, it's our yin yang. You can go to our website to look at our jigs. The yin yang series is all black and white jigs. The black one will be all red foil and have a black cloth over it. And the white one will be a white cloth and glow jigs, and it will be a glow. So you can use the glow jig for night and day as well. So we call it a day and night jig. So you can use in all conditions. That's a black jig you can use at night as well as in the day as well. So because in the daytime it's bright, the water will be in the black and white photos, the background of the water will be pure white and the jig will be black. So in the glow, it will be different. The glow jig in the morning, you'll have a UV silhouette, so it's actually charged with UV. It become a black jig in a UV black jig. So it's a different type of a jig. So for fluorocarbon leader, yes, I was talking on the last masterclass. So we'll how to set up your whole line setup. Yes, always use fluorocarbon. The reason is that because your main line, as we mentioned last masterclass, is that main line always use braid line. Braid line do not have, it's not stretchy compared to what we use normally. So braid doesn't have a stretch as well as doesn't have the memory. Because if you have memory, then the line will coil up. So that's why we usually advise use braid for the main line. So because it doesn't stretch, when the squid pull, you can actually feel the touch of the squid. Then you can strike it with the advanced technique. So, but fluorocarbon, what's the purpose? If you say that, we add fluorocarbon, is the reason why is so that you actually do not make the line not so visible for the braid line. Two, also is that to protect the braid line. Because the braid line, if you fish, a lot of times you fish in a weed area or the rocks area. If it's braid line, because it's made of cloth material, so once it touches the rocks and rocks or the weed, if you try to pull off the snag, the line might get cut easily from the rocks. So if you have a fluorocarbon, it's much tougher, and you have almost tiny bit of stretch, so you'll protect the line when you're actually trying to pull out the weed area as well. So it's to prevent line cut from rocks as well as weed. So we always suggest to have a 50 centimeters to 100 meter, so a meter or 50 centimeters worth of fluorocarbon to protect the braid line from being cut as well. So this is the reason that we usually have a meter of that. But if you use FG knot, as mentioned on our masterclass, some people use FG knot like fishing bream, because a bream for soft plastic, you usually do not use clips like we use in squid fishing. So you want to tie direct to the thing. So if you want to change the soft plastic, you have to cut the line and stuff. So for us, we usually have the 50 centimeter to a meter of fluorocarbon outside our last guide, so that it does not damage our guide, because we're using high-end rod that is, the tip is much more smaller. So I don't want constantly to have it rub against the guide. But if you're using if you use FG knot, you can actually have the fluorocarbon as long as your rod. Let's say this is a 7-foot rod. You can have actually 7 foot worth of fluorocarbon. Actually, can have the FG knot come out, the knot come all the way here and cast it through the guide. Because FG knot is so thin, you can cast it through the guide as well. And if you want to change the jig, you can just actually snip it off the front if you want to, like to change the tie. If you don't want to use a clip, but usually we suggest use a clip to protect the integrity of the knot that ties against the jig. So usually we will suggest to use a clip as well as fluorocarbon. What is the best jig size of the ocean rocks? Jig size actually is not depending on, for jig size in the previous masterclass we teach, so the size is actually determined. We usually recommend people to use, a lot of people in the Western culture, they always go big or go home. So usually they go for 3, 4, 5 jig to catch big squid. But for us, I would suggest actually try to go as small jig as possible you can, because small jig you can catch small, medium, and large squid, but big jig you can catch only big squid. But the purpose of the jig size actually to us is not because we want to catch big or small squid or just catch small squid. The purpose of the size is actually to based on the current of the weather. So if the current of the sea is very strong, you want a bigger jig so that it sinks faster down to get to the bottom of the weed baits. And also, so we try to go as small as possible. If the current is not strong, we try to go 2.5. Because 2.5 and it sink down, if you can get to the bottom without the current maintaining it on the top, so you can get to the bottom, that'll be good. So we usually go the smallest the water condition allowed on the day. So because the key is that a smaller jig you can entice big and small squid, but the big jig you actually put off the smaller squid and the medium-sized squid because they get intimidated by the size of the jig. So it's jig size doesn't matter, because jig size actually the key is to get the jig to be able to swim down to the bottom of the sea. So the bigger it is, the heavier it is, you can sink to where the strike zone is. So it's no difference. So size is just for to get if the current is strong, you need a heavier jig naturally to get it down to the bottom. At times you use deep jig or add an extra weight on the front to get it down. So size does not matter. For barometric pressure, for snapper fishing, I care a lot more. For squid, people do follow that and stuff, but for personally, I do not really check on that. So for that, I can't really say it actually helps or it doesn't help, because I personally do not go research into it, and our team do not research into it as well. So for fishing, our team do follow that above 1,000 and stuff, that we go for snapper and all these things so that it helps. But personally, for squid, we do not follow that, because squid play a lot of factors as well. If it's a sunny day, sometimes it's really weird. If it's a sunny day, if the water is too warm, they tend to move deeper. So you can fish much deeper water, like 6 to 8 meters, 8 meters and above, because the water column is much more consistent. So in a land base, you can't cast that far, so you tend to struggle as well. But at times, they like the warm weather, warmer waters. They actually do come closer. So it's actually hit and miss. So the key is to learn all the techniques and use the right equipment and the jigs as well to be ready. Because for land based, it's just when the squid come in the school, you want to maximize your chances to be catching and competing with others that's fishing around to catch them. So it's key that you learn the techniques as well as to use the right gear and the right sink rate and everything to get to the strike zone, and to make your jig to choose the right colors to be more visible compared to other people's jig, so that the squid can see yours compared to others as well, and the technique to actually attract them to your jig compared to others. So it's all depending on different situation and different day as well. So it's actually squid temperamental. So you have to hope that when they come in the school at the time when you're there, because land-based, you're just casting one spot constantly in one area because you can't move like a boat. So you have to be constantly prepared. Once they're here, you catch the first one, be prepared to hurry up to cast, because usually there tend to be a few in the school. So usually you catch one. That's why it's annoying when you're fishing in a pier. Once you catch one, everyone will start casting over you to try to get the followers and stuff. So it's key for us, we usually catch and we take photos and stuff. Actually, we're wasting time, because if we're missing out on the opportunity to catch the different followers and stuff. So if we don't spend the time taking photos as well, just keep casting straight away at the spot where you caught the first one, you tend to catch the second or the third one. Okay, what rod and reel setup do you run with what power line? The lighter the better. For rod and reel, you can watch back to our last master class. So we were talking about how to set up the rod. So I'll just go through it quickly. So for rod, rod doesn't matter. Like we say, cheap or expensive, doesn't matter. The only difference between that is that the expensive rod, they are more sensitive. Then you can incorporate more advanced technique to feel, because when it's more sensitive, you can feel the squid. You can have better strike rate. As you strike the squid, you can catch it much more easily, so your catch will be increased. It's no different. So if your because I have a friend that actually used a $20 Kmart extendable rod, and he outfish people using expensive like $1,000 Japanese rod and stuff. So the key is the rod, you have to become one with the rod. So as long as you understand how the rod is giving you the information, telling you that squid is on, squid is touching, as long as you can read how your rod is transferring those information to you, you actually can use a cheap rod. That doesn't matter. So you can, because squid, you don't need to use fancy stuff. It's only that it's like a normal car, an expensive car. The difference is that one can go have more function and go much faster and stuff. The other will still get you to the same destination, just like the expensive car. So rod will do the same, just that as long as you learn how to read what your rod tries to tell you. If the rod is able to tell you what the squid is doing, then you can feel it, then you can catch it more compared to other people. So that's the key thing. For power of line, you can look back at the video, because that one is more personal choice. So for us, we usually line, we don't save on line, because line is cheap and expensive line. We find there's a difference as well. We'll be teaching the difference between 4-ply, 8-ply, and 16-ply line. That will be a little bit another masterclass. But for us, we don't go the normal way, because normally people go quite light, 8 pound, 12 pound and stuff. But usually we go 15 to 21 pound. But in saying that, our 21 pound line is different. We use Gosen line. Gosen line is very expensive in Australia. So 21 pound line is 16 ply, because of the 16 ply is much thinner. So the whole line is thin. So it's equivalent to like a 15 to 12 pound line diameter. So it's still thin. We can still be very sensitive. The line difference is that if you go higher pound, you lose the sensitivity. Same as bream fishing. So you tend to go lighter pound, then you can feel the squid touch much better. But in saying that, because we fish bottom, the squid is at the bottom weed area. So if you go the lighter, the chances of snag and losing a jig is higher. So you have to wait out. You want to get a line that is heavier pound, but you lose the sensitivity. Or you go lighter pound, you catch more, but you might lose jig. Or like us, we go more expensive line with higher poundage, but the diameter is thinner, so we don't lose the jig, and also we can still feel the sensitivity because this line is thin as well. Also, line pound, if the lighter it is, you can cast a further distance as well. If the diameter is thicker, you tend to can't get the distance. So for land-based, you will try to go a thinner line as well as the lighter line as possible, so that you can cast the distance to cover more area, to try to find where the squid are at the time of where they're swimming around. Because land-based is much harder, because you only get certain time and spot where the squid are around. Yep. Hope that answers your question. What's the deepest have you caught squid? For us, Victoria, I can catch like even 15 meters and stuff, so it doesn't matter. So it's just pretty much, the key thing is that they do hang around, just that a lot of people, they don't fish deep. It's because in Australia we don't go, our squid are not that big as well, and we don't have to use so big of a jig, because a lot of times when you go deeper, the current is much stronger, and also a lot of times that we do not have the patience. So at the times that, because you need to have the patience to let the jig sink to the bottom. So if they're very deep, you have to let it sink. So you have to have, in Victoria, in Australia, we don't usually go for deep version of the jig. So a deep version jig usually will have the you either put the extra weight and stuff so that you can sink much faster. So it's another technique as well. So you actually have to know to get the jig to the how deep it is. For boat, it's easy because like you tend to see on the sounder like how deep it is. Then from there, you know, in the box of at the back of the box. At the back of the jig box, usually you'll say the sink rate. Like let's say for example, a size 3.5 jig would take 3 to 3.5 seconds approximately. But that one, this information, you just have to make adjustment, because these are all tested in a controlled environment where the water are stagnant. So you need to consider of the current of the day. So if the currents are strong, so it says 3 to 3.5 seconds, you might need to compensate to 4 to 4.5 seconds because it takes longer to get to the meter. So that's why In sounder, if you see 5 seconds, 5 meters or 8 meters, you can try to add that times the amount of the time that it was given at the back of the box. Then you start counting like to get the jig down to the bottom of the where the seabed is. A lot of times we just don't bother to fish too deep because it just takes too long for the squid jig to get down in Victoria. That's why. Any more questions? So we're running a promotion right now. So we have our birthday sale, 15%. So go to our website, use BDay15. As well as if you spend $150, you get a limited edition not for sale snake squid jig. As well as if you spend $200, you get our limited edition line dance squid jig as well. So these are promotional items. For line dance, you can still buy them, but for the snake, you won't get them. And you can, if you're not sure about colors and stuff, go to our website, and under the learn section, we have like a few master class there as well, like how the color, how to choose the size, what's the difference between glow and UV glow, those will be there. So also you can look at our jigs just for an idea, like what's the different color, different patterns and all these things, like our signature dragon design. So like I say, head body separation. We have scales to make it look more realistic like a real fish. When it comes black and white, there's a scale. Then also we have the hair here, the hair of the dragon. Actually it looks like a bleeding, when it comes black and white, it looks like a bleeding baitfish. So this, all our design actually have a purpose. So we try to increase the catch rate with our jigs and also the colors and stuff. So head body separation. So the head is like a target for the squid because they tend to grab the bait by the head first to suffocate their prey before they grab into the mouth. So that's why we have like a reason behind our jig. It's not just a fancy design, but we put in the effort to actually from our experience as well, to try to mimic the more natural prey where how the squid feed on. So any more questions? Technique is very important, so do master and incorporate different techniques into your fishing, because squid is really temperamental. So a different day they have a different taste of colored jigs. So don't just have to play safe. You can have an all day and night jig, red foil black jig and a white cloth glow jig. These two always have at least a set in your jig box. Then once you start become more experienced, incorporate the UV jigs, other colored jigs, reflective jigs, and all this stuff into your arsenal as well, because those will work more effectively at certain times. So more effectively, as in two persons fishing next to each other, you'll be catching if you're using the right jig compared to other people as well, and using the right technique as well. You actually even increase much better as well. So different days, squid really have a different temperament. At times they're more aggressive. Time they prefer more subtle as well. So if you're not catching, if you see in the next store is catching, look at the technique as well. What technique they're using. If it's aggressive one, so you tend to know, okay, I have to change it up to a more aggressive technique because the squid is in a feeding mood. They tend to want to chase after something rather than something is more stagnant. Then you have to see what color they're using. Then you see the weather as well. If it's sunrise, sunset, they're using an orange or pink jig. Okay, you maybe try to mimic them as well. Then to try to learn as well from seeing, because a lot of people they don't tell you the secret. You see they're catching, but inside here they actually have a plan what they're doing. So by just looking, you won't understand what they're doing, but you try to break it down from what we teach you to see what your person fishing next to you that is having success, to try to mimic and incorporate into your current fishing on the same day as well, to try to catch. All right, so we'll give it a minute or two. If no more questions, then I think we'll call it a day. So the next topic I'll be covering will be more advanced technique. So it's more how you fish when the current is strong, and also how to actually make your jig work as well. So the thing is that with fishing current is a different ball game. It's not easy to fish when the current is very strong, especially other state compared to Victoria. You tend to have the open sea compared to us. We are in the bay, so we have an open sea as well as a bay. So bay area, the current is not so strong, so it's much easier to fish. But if you're in a current, a strong current, you have to use other sort of technique as well. So those techniques we'll cover in the next topic. So don't miss out if you have time. So remember to follow our community page or our Instagram. So just in case we do not share the masterclass on other fishing page, at least you can see and be ready for the next talk as well. All right, I think that's it for today. Thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you in the next masterclass. If you have any more questions, just feel free to leave in the comment. Once we see it, we'll reply it. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.